Hey guys, tonight we're going to climb up an ancient wind-swept mountain where the air tastes like cold stone, and the clouds hang heavy like damp wool. You're standing there barefoot, because let's face it, sandals and rocky peaks are a terrible combo, and the chill seeps into your bones. The sky above is a murky gray, and somewhere, far off in the distance, you hear a faint crack of thunder, not close enough to worry you. Yet, you spot him, Prometheus, sitting on a rough patch of rock, his back straight but shoulders tight, like he's bracing for something. He's holding a torch, not a grand flaming thing like you see in epic paintings, but a simple fennel stalk, its tip barely smoldering. The flame hisses in the wind, stubborn but small, like it knows it's not supposed to be here. Prometheus glances nervously at the sky, probably wondering if Zeus is watching. Spoiler alert, Zeus is always watching and he's not the forgiving type. You creep a little closer, and the cold air brushes your skin, sending a shiver down your spine. Prometheus doesn't seem to notice you. He's lost in thought, tracing the outline of a crack in the rock with his finger. His beard is a little scruffy, his robe is more rumpled than godly, and he honestly looks like a guy who's been worrying way too much about his to-do list. The thing is, Prometheus isn't exactly the suave, lightning bolt-dodging rebel you might imagine. He's more anxious accountant who made one too many bad bets. And here's the kicker. You probably won't survive this climb. Not if Zeus has anything to say about it. Mortals aren't exactly welcome up here, especially not when fire, the secret of the gods, is involved. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, tell me where you're listening from and what time it is for you. I'm always curious who's drifting off where. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You take a slow, careful step forward, and the rocks shift under your bare feet, crunching softly. Prometheus looks up, eyes narrowing, as if he's heard something, or maybe just felt the shift in the air. The clouds above twist and churn like Zeus's own mood swings, and you can almost taste the electricity in the air, sharp and metallic. There's a tension here, a waiting. Prometheus's hand tightens around the fennel stalk. You can see it clearly now. The fire is tiny, almost unimpressive, more a stubborn ember than a roaring blaze. And yet, it's the spark that could change everything, or get him into a world of trouble. Historians still argue whether Prometheus planned this as an act of rebellion, or if it was more of a whoops, didn't think that through moment. Either way, you can feel the weight of it settling on your shoulders like a damp blanket. He takes a slow breath, the air fogging in front of him, and you realize this isn't just about stealing fire. It's about a quiet, desperate hope. A hope that maybe, just maybe, humans could have a little more than they were given. Something to warm their hands with, something to cook their food, something to light the dark corners of their caves. It's not flashy, not heroic in the big, bold sense, but it's something, and sometimes that's enough. The mountain groans softly beneath your feet, a reminder that the earth has been here long before you, and it'll be here long after. Prometheus shifts, glancing once more at the sky, and you swear the clouds darken like Zeus is frowning. The wind picks up, tugging at your hair, and the flame flickers dangerously. You hold your breath, heart beating a little faster because, whether or not Prometheus is ready for it, this story is about to catch fire. You steady yourself against the cold, rough rock as Prometheus's breath fogs in the chill air. His fingers tighten around the fennel stalk, as if the thin stem could somehow hold back the weight of divine fury. The thing is, fire wasn't even the first thing he gave to humans. Nope. Before all this drama, Prometheus had been sneaking little gifts to mortals like a cautious uncle slipping treats under the table at a family dinner. He gave them the basics, nothing flashy. A bit of knowledge here, a touch of skill there. One of the first was teaching them how to build with mud and straw. Not exactly thrilling, but you have to admit, houses are better than freezing under a tree. Then there was the time he showed them how to use numbers. Yes, the same numbers that you, centuries later, would stare at during long, sleepy math classes. Historians still argue whether Prometheus taught humans farming techniques or just the basics of counting goats. But either way, it wasn't enough to make Zeus angry. Not yet. You wonder, standing there, what Prometheus was thinking back then. Maybe he thought these little gifts would slip under the radar. Maybe he thought he was helping in a quiet, unnoticed way, just nudging humanity along without shaking the heavens too much. But small gifts weren't enough. Mortals were still cold, hungry, and mostly eating raw plants and whatever they could catch. Imagine a world without baked bread, roasted lamb, or even grilled cheese. Tragic, really. Prometheus's eyes narrow, and you can almost hear the creak of his thoughts grinding together. Fire wasn't just warmth, it was a game changer. But up to this point, his gifts had been the kind that could be brushed aside. A few seeds? Sure. A tip on bricklaying? Fine. But fire? That was a different story. That was the thing that could bridge the gap between mortals and gods. You take a step closer, and your foot slips slightly on a smooth patch of stone, maybe worn down by centuries of other travelers, or maybe, just maybe, by the slow drip of ancient gods' footsteps. The cave-like walls around you hold echoes, or maybe it's your own, breathing bouncing back. Prometheus doesn't move, but his knuckles whiten on the stalk. You get the sense he's remembering all those smaller gifts, all those tiny rebellions that didn't quite tip the balance. And yet, it wasn't enough to make humans thrive. Without fire, the world was just cold, dull, a place of roots and rainwater, not of roasted chestnuts or simmering stew. You think of the first person who ever figured out they could cook an onion and how that must have blown their mind. And you can't help but grin at the thought of an ancient mortal biting into a raw onion and thinking, this could be better. The wind picks up, swirling dust around your feet, and Prometheus shifts, almost like he's heard your thoughts. There's a weight in the air, a quiet, crackling tension that seems to hum through the stones, through the flame, through your bones. You glance at the flame again. So small, so fragile. It's easy to forget how much can come from a single spark. Prometheus's gaze hardens. Maybe he's remembering how mortals struggled, how they fumbled in the dark, how they shivered at night, how they cowered in storms while the gods watched from their lofty thrones, warm and glowing. And maybe he's thinking, enough. Maybe it's time someone broke the rules. The air smells faintly of smoke, a sharp contrast to the cold, damp stone, and you realize that sometimes the quiet gifts, the ones that seem boring or small, are the ones that change everything. Like a whispered secret that spreads, or a single ember that sets a forest alight. Prometheus straightens slightly, his fingers flexing on the stalk, and you feel it. The story shifting. The wind quiets, as if waiting. The flame burns a little, brighter, steady now despite the cold, and you wonder, what's the line between a small gift and a revolution? Between a kind gesture and defiance? Historians still argue whether Prometheus knew what he was starting, or if he just couldn't help himself. Either way, the ember is lit, and the world is about to change. You can feel it now, that strange buzzing tension in the air, the kind that makes your skin prickle like you're standing too close to a storm. Prometheus grips the fennel stalk tightly, the faint glow at its tip flickering against the cave-like walls. And as you glance around, you can almost picture the gods above, lounging on their cushioned thrones, not a care in the world, sipping from golden cups, while mortals below shiver in the dark. Because here's the thing, the gods, on Olympus, loved a good party. Their feasts were the stuff of legend, long tables piled high with golden platters, goblets overflowing with ambrosia, the air thick with laughter and music, and while they feasted on roast boar and honey cakes, mortals, well, mortals were, stuck with whatever they could scrounge up, roots, berries, maybe some raw meat if they were lucky. You can almost hear a faint echo of clinking goblets and the soft strum of a lyre, drifting down through the clouds like a taunt. Prometheus shifts uncomfortably, probably remembering those feasts too. After all, he was technically invited to those parties. He was a Titan, one of the old guard. Not quite in the inner circle anymore, but still, there. You imagine him sitting awkwardly at the edge of a banquet table, watching Zeus carve a slice of roast ox, the scent of fat and smoke wafting through the air, while mortals below gnawed on roots in the cold. And then there was that infamous moment, Prometheus's little trick. The story goes that during one of these grand feasts, Prometheus offered Zeus a choice, 2 piles of meat. One looked juicy and delicious but was actually just bones wrapped in glistening fat. The other looked dull and unappetizing but was filled with the real meat. Zeus, hungry and distracted, picked the shiny pile, and when he realized he'd been tricked, well, let's just say the thunder started rumbling. Historians still argue whether Zeus was truly fooled or if he just let it happen, like an annoyed parent humoring a clever but annoying child. But either way, it left a mark. Zeus wasn't known for his patience. And Prometheus? Well, you get the feeling he knew exactly what he was doing, even if it wasn't the smartest move. Maybe it was pride, maybe it was a jab at Zeus's ego, or maybe it was a quiet rebellion, the same spark that would later lead him to steal fire. You take a breath, the air sharp with the scent of distant storms, and you wonder, what would it have felt like to be a mortal looking up at those glittering feasts in the sky? To know that the gods were warm and full while you huddled by a dying fire, stomach growling. It's enough to make you angry, or at least hungry. You think of the first person who ever roasted meat over a flame, how the smoke must have curled in the air, the scent drifting out into the dark, calling others closer. It's a small thing, but it changes everything. Prometheus glances at the flickering flame, his expression hardening like stone. You can almost hear the crackle of the fire, soft but persistent, like a promise in the dark. The wind shifts, carrying with it a faint scent of smoke, and you realize that in this moment, this quiet, almost boring moment, something monumental is happening. A seed is being planted, not with fanfare or fireworks, but with a stolen ember, held in a nervous god's hand. The rocks beneath your feet feel ancient, cold, and unmoved by the drama playing out above. The cave seems to hold its breath, as if it's waiting for the next chapter to unfold. And you feel it too. That quiet realization that even the biggest stories start small. Not with a roar, but with a flicker. Prometheus stands still, the torch glowing gently in his hand, and you can't help but think, this is it. This is the moment before the moment, the pause before the storm. And it's not loud, or fast, or fiery, yet. But it's coming. The quiet wraps around you like a heavy blanket, and you shift your weight, feeling the slight give of the earth beneath your feet. The wind stirs again, a restless sigh, and Prometheus doesn't move. He stares at the flickering ember in the fennel stalk, shoulders tense as if waiting for a thunderbolt that hasn't yet arrived. And you wonder, how did it get to this point? How did a titan, one of the old gods, end up standing here, alone, clutching a stolen ember like a child, hiding a forbidden toy? It all started as so many things do with a trick. That feast with Zeus, the one where Prometheus switched the good meat for bones, wasn't just a prank. It was a challenge, a quiet rebellion. By wrapping the bones in fat, Prometheus wasn't just making a joke at Zeus's expense. He was drawing a line in the sand. Mortals would keep the best parts of the sacrifice, and the gods would get the leftovers. It was a shift in power, small, but significant. And Zeus? Well, Zeus didn't laugh. Historians still argue whether Zeus's anger was about the trick itself or the symbolism behind it. After all, the gods thrived on offerings, the smoke from the altars, the sweet scent of roasting fat wafting up to Olympus. If mortals kept the best parts, what did that say about the divine order? Zeus couldn't let that stand, so he did what Zeus does best. He punished the mortals. He took fire away. Yep, you heard that right. It wasn't just a matter of fire. Exists, mortals have it. No, Zeus, in a fit of divine pique, snatched fire back, leaving humans cold, hungry, and huddled in the dark. A bit dramatic, really. You imagine the mortals looking up at the sky, shivering in their animal skins, wondering what they did wrong, probably not realizing that their fate had been decided over a fancy dinner party argument they weren't even invited to. Prometheus shifts, the ember glowing faintly in the dark. It's almost laughable, really. All of this, the trick, the punishment, the theft, over something as basic as fire. But then, you think about what fire means. Warmth, light, the ability to cook, to craft, to keep wild animals at bay. Without fire, mortals were at the mercy of the night. And that was something even a titan couldn't ignore. You glance at Prometheus, who seems to shrink and swell at the same time, caught between fear and defiance. His beard stirs in the breeze, and you can almost hear the low, distant grumble of Zeus's, discontent rolling through the clouds. The gods, you realize, aren't used to being questioned. They don't like it when mortals, or even titans, challenge their authority. Prometheus's gaze flickers toward the sky, a flash of something. Anger. Regret, maybe just exhaustion crossing his face. You wonder if he's thinking about the price, not just the punishment waiting for him, but the slow, creeping consequence of his choice. Because once you give humans fire, you can't take it back. You can't unlight a spark. And there's an odd, almost funny thing about all this. Prometheus's rebellion wasn't some grand, fiery heist. It wasn't a daring raid on Olympus or a dramatic escape under cover of night. No, it was quiet. Almost boring. A single stalk of fennel, smoldering at the tip, slipped into his hand and carried down the mountain. No guards, no alarms. Just a nervous god with a risky idea and a spark that could change the world. The wind picks up again, swirling dust around your ankles, and you think about how often history turns on small, quiet moments. A glance, a choice, a trick played at a feast. And here you are, standing in the middle of it all, watching as Prometheus stands alone, the flickering ember casting a soft glow on his face. You shift your weight, and the ground seems to hum beneath. You, like the earth itself, is holding its breath. Prometheus looks at the flame, and you get the sense that he's not just thinking about the humans huddled in the cold. He's thinking about Zeus and the price of defiance. He's thinking about whether it's worth it. The ember glows brighter for a moment, then dims, and you feel it. That tiny spark, held in a trembling hand, might just set the world on fire. Or it might not. You can almost hear the quiet tick of time stretching, a moment balanced on the thin edge of a flickering flame. Prometheus stands as still as the rocks around him, and you feel the weight of waiting, like the whole mountain is holding its breath, watching to see what happens next. The torch in his hand glows faintly, a pale, stubborn ember in the dark, and you wonder, was this what he imagined? A grand act of defiance, or just an awkward pause before the storm? Prometheus shifts his weight, and the rock beneath his sandals grinds softly, a sound swallowed by the wind. You feel it too. That sense of being on the cusp of something but not quite there yet. And maybe Prometheus is thinking the same thing, because he doesn't move. He just stands, staring into the flicker, his expression somewhere between determination and dread. And here's the thing you might not have heard before. Stealing fire wasn't some daring cloak and dagger heist. There was no thundering chariot ride through the clouds, no battle cries, no heroic music swelling in the background. Nope. Prometheus didn't sneak into Zeus's treasury or wrestle a flame from the heart of Olympus. He just walked up, picked up a bit of fire, and walked away. Quiet, unimpressive, almost boring. Historians still argue whether Prometheus was allowed to take the fire at first, like a houseguest borrowing something from the kitchen and then conveniently forgetting to return it. Or maybe Zeus wasn't paying attention, and Prometheus thought, well, if no one says anything, it's probably fine. Either way, no alarms rang out. No guards descended. Just a titan, a fennel stalk, and a slow, careful descent down the mountainside. You picture him, making his way down the rocky path, the wind tugging at his robes, the flame barely clinging to life. No one stopping him, no one noticing. It's almost laughable, really, this quiet, clumsy act that would spark such chaos. You glance at the flame now, and it feels so small. It's hard to imagine that this little ember could lead to so much drama. And yet, isn't that the way it always goes? The big moments in history aren't always loud. They don't come with trumpets and fanfare. Sometimes, They're just a tired figure with a stolen ember, hoping no one notices until it's too late. The air around you feels colder, somehow sharper, as if the mountain itself is aware of the quiet rebellion happening in its shadow. You can almost see the path stretching down, winding through stones and sparse scrub, a lonely trail that Prometheus will follow, one cautious step at a time. And you wonder if he felt the weight of it, if each step felt heavier, like the ember in his hand was growing, not in heat but in consequence. You imagine the moment he reaches the bottom, stepping onto the earth where mortals dwell, holding out the ember like a gift. Did they gather around him, faces wide-eyed with awe? Or did they just stare, not quite understanding what it meant? Yet, did they see the flicker and think, that's it? Or maybe, what do we even do with that? The truth is, fire wasn't the instant, magical fix you might expect. It didn't transform humanity overnight. It was more of a slow, awkward adjustment, like getting a new piece of technology and spending weeks trying to figure out how to use it without setting your house on fire. And you can almost hear Prometheus muttering under his breath as he trudges down the mountain. This better be worth it. The wind sighs again, and you get the sense that something is shifting, that a line has been crossed. You glance at Prometheus, and you see it in his face, the realization that he can't take it back. That ember, so small and fragile, is already a spark too far. The gods won't let this slide. The punishment is coming. But for now, it's just a titan, a flicker of fire, and a mountain humming quietly under the weight of an unfolding story. You step back slightly, feeling the rock beneath you, and the quiet is so deep, so absolute, it feels like the earth itself is listening, and somewhere, high above, you imagine Zeus narrowing his eyes, thunderheads beginning to gather. The wind whispers through the mountain pass, brushing over your skin like the soft sigh of an ancient story still lingering in the stones. Prometheus takes a single cautious step forward, the torch flickering faintly in his grip, as if the flame itself is nervous about the whole situation. You feel your own breath slow, matching the rhythm of the mountain's stillness, and for a moment it's easy to forget that this isn't just any ember. It's the spark that will rewrite the relationship between mortals and the gods. Prometheus pauses again, and you swear you can hear the faintest rustle, like the mountain itself shifting its weight. His eyes flick up toward the clouds, a wary glance, but the sky, gray, heavy, coiled with the tension of a storm that hasn't yet broken, doesn't give him any clues. And maybe that's the worst part. The waiting. Because when you steal fire from Zeus, you know the punishment is coming. You just don't know when. You shuffle your feet slightly, and a small rock tumbles down the slope, clicking softly as it skips over the stones. Prometheus doesn't react. He's lost in thought, as if weighing the cost of what he's done. And really, can you blame him? It's not like there's a manual for how to successfully smuggle divine fire down a mountain. There's no godly rebellions for dummies guide to flip through. Historians still argue whether Prometheus had a grand plan or if this whole thing was just one long, impulsive moment. Some say he was a visionary, a hero who saw a future where mortals didn't have to shiver in the dark. Others think he was more of an accidental troublemaker, a titan with a soft spot for humans and a tendency to act first, think later. Either way, here he is, awkwardly inching his way down a mountain holding a burning stick and waiting for the sky to explode. The wind shifts again, carrying with it a faint, sharp scent, like burning pine and wet stone. And you glance around, half expecting a flash of lightning to split the sky. But there's only the quiet, the heavy, waiting hush that feels too big for this moment. It's as if the world itself is holding its breath, watching this odd little figure shuffle along a rocky path with a spark that could change everything, or not. You imagine Prometheus finally reaching the foot of the mountain, stepping onto the dusty, uneven earth where mortals eke out their lives. He holds the flame up, a hesitant gift, and the people stare, first at him, then at each other, unsure what to do. It's like showing up at a party with a mysterious new gadget. Impressive, yes, but also kind of confusing. They didn't ask for this. They didn't know they needed it. And now that they have it, what next? One of the mortals, maybe a wiry old man in a faded tunic, edges closer, squinting at the flicker of flame. He reaches out tentatively, as if touching it might burn him, or worse, anger the gods. And Prometheus stands there, waiting, the weight of 1,000 unspoken consequences settling on his shoulders. The truth is, the flame doesn't roar to life. There's no sudden burst of light, no magical transformation. It's small, simple, just an ember that glows against the backdrop of a cold, gray world. But isn't that how most revolutions start? With a single spark, a quiet moment, a small, stubborn act of defiance that no one notices, until it's too late. Prometheus finally exhales, a long, slow breath that seems to melt into the wind. The ember flickers again, steady now, and you think about all the small moments that build into big stories. A quiet gift, a stolen flame, a titan standing in the dark with a decision that can't be undone. And you wonder as you stand there watching, if Prometheus knew that the real weight of this moment wasn't the fire itself, but the choice to give it away. Above, the clouds begin to churn and you swear you hear a low, distant rumble, like the gods are starting to stir. The air feels heavier, as if something is shifting in the bones of the world, and you know deep down that this quiet is temporary. The storm is coming, but for now, it's just Prometheus, a flame, and a mountain that seems to hold its breath, waiting for the next move. The torch flickers once, twice, then steadies again, as if it's getting used to the idea of being part of a story that might end badly. Prometheus takes another careful step, the weight of the fennel stalk shifting in his hand, and you swear. You can hear the faint, almost imperceptible crackle of the ember catching. It's such a small sound, so subtle you'd miss it if you weren't standing right here in the cold, with the wind whispering around the rocks. And you realize, this wasn't the grand theft of the ages. There were no golden gates, no vaults, a flame guarded by mythical beasts, no alarms blaring across the clouds. Just a god, a plant stalk, and a very long walk downhill. It's almost boring, almost laughable, like sneaking out of a party with an extra slice of cake wrapped in a napkin. And yet, here we are, on the cusp of a punishment that will echo through the ages. You glance around, half expecting a thunderbolt to crack the sky in two, but all you get is a low grumble, more like a stomach ache than a declaration of war. Maybe Zeus is busy. Maybe he's still lounging at his feast, oblivious to the small ember slipping out of his grasp. Or maybe, and this is the funny part, he knows, and he's just waiting, letting Prometheus think he's gotten away with it, building up the suspense like a cat toying with a mouse before the final pounce. Historians still argue whether Zeus allowed Prometheus to take the fire on purpose, like a strange cosmic test, or whether he genuinely didn't notice. And that's the thing with gods. They're either impossibly petty or frustratingly mysterious, and sometimes both in the same afternoon. Prometheus keeps walking, and you wonder if the weight of the ember feels heavier than it should. Like, it's not just fire, but the burden of 1,000 future mistakes. He steps over a loose stone, his sandal scraping across the grit, and you can almost hear the faint rustle of history shifting underfoot. You imagine the mortals waiting below, huddled in caves, staring out into the dark, their bellies tight with hunger, their fingers numb from the cold. Did they even know they were missing something? Did they dream of fire? Or were they just surviving, one cold night at a time? You think about the earliest humans, their wide, wary eyes scanning the horizon for predators, their shivers curling up from their spines, their hands rough from digging and scraping and building. And then you think about how they must have stared, dumbfounded when Prometheus arrived with that tiny flickering flame. Like, what do we even do with that? The answer? Not much. At least not right away. Because fire wasn't some instant life changer. It didn't come with instructions or a helpful pop-up tutorial. It was dangerous, unpredictable, and easy to lose. The first time someone tried to cook a meal, it probably tasted terrible. The first hut that caught fire was probably met with panic and screams. Fire, it turns out, is a slow teacher. Prometheus walks on, and you get the sense he knows this, that the flame is just the start, not the solution. That humans will have to fumble their way forward, burning themselves a few times, making mistakes, figuring it out. And you wonder if he's smiling a little at the thought. Because really, isn't that the human story in a nutshell? Stumble, learn, repeat. The air shifts again, colder now, and you feel a prickle on the back of your neck. The sky is darker, heavier, and the wind tugs at the edges of your tunic like a child pulling at a sleeve. You glance up half expecting to see Zeus's face etched in the clouds frowning down. But there's only the quiet, the waiting, the almost sound of an impending storm. Prometheus pauses, the ember glowing gently in his hand. And you swear you hear it, just for a moment. The soft, hungry hiss of something unseen. Maybe it's the wind, or maybe it's the first whisper of the punishment yet to come. The flame flickers again, and you take a breath, holding it in the cold air, wondering, does Prometheus feel victorious right now? Or does he know, deep down, that this tiny ember is the beginning of the end? The air feels heavier now, thick with the quiet before something breaks, and Prometheus pauses for a moment on the slope, the ember in his hand glowing faintly like a dying star. He shifts his weight, scanning the horizon, as if half expecting someone, maybe Zeus, maybe an angry cloud, to come barreling down the mountainside. But nothing happens. Just the soft sigh of the wind, the distant rustle of leaves, and the faintest crackle of the ember catching a bit more air. You realize you're holding your breath without meaning to, like even your lungs are waiting for the next thing. Prometheus lets out a long exhale, and the ember flares slightly in the dark, a warm golden glow against the gray stone. You get the sense that for all the tension, he's not quite sure what happens next. Does he march into a mortal village like some divine door-to-door salesman, holding out the ember with a dramatic ta-da? Or does he awkwardly clear his throat, offer it up, and shuffle back up the mountain before anyone asks too many questions? When he finally reaches the base of the slope, the mortal world is, well, let's just say it's underwhelming. A cluster of rough huts, some half-hearted attempts at farming, a lot of people shivering under animal hides and chewing on roots that probably taste like dirt. You imagine their faces when they see Prometheus, a tall, ragged figure descending from the heights, holding out a flickering stalk like it's the answer to everything. There's no applause, no dramatic music swelling in the background, just a few curious glances and maybe a shrug or two. And here's the thing that doesn't get mentioned enough. When Prometheus gave mortals fire, they didn't really know what to do with it. They were confused, hesitant. Fire wasn't an instant fix. It was a weird, hot thing that could burn you, or worse, attract unwanted attention from wild animals. The first humans who tried to cook probably ended up with charred meat and a lot of smoke in their eyes. Historians still argue whether cooking was immediately a game changer, or just an inconvenient mess for the first few generations. Some even think early fire use was more about scaring off predators than whipping up a tasty meal. And then there's the awkward problem of keeping the fire alive. You couldn't exactly go back up the mountain every time it went out. The first firekeepers must have been like overly anxious parents, hovering over embers, panicking when the flames sputtered. Imagine being the guy who let the fire die. Yikes. You'd probably get side-eye from the whole tribe for days. You can almost see it. A small group of mortals huddled around the ember Prometheus has gifted them, poking at it with sticks, trying to figure out how close they can get without burning off their eyebrows. One brave soul, let's call him Thales just for fun, sticks his hand a little too close and yelps, stumbling back as the others laugh. It's a learning process. Fire, after all, is a tricky friend. Prometheus stands back watching all this unfold, and you get the sense that maybe this isn't the triumphant moment he pictured. There's no immediate transformation, no sudden leap into Golden Age civilization, just a lot of confused faces and a smoldering stalk of fennel that nobody really knows how to use yet. You imagine Prometheus muttering under his breath, "Seriously? This is the thanks I get?" And yet, there's a strange kind of beauty in it, isn't there? This awkward, messy beginning, the slow, clumsy steps forward, the way humans fumble, with the gift, burning themselves, losing it, trying again. It's not a grand, sweeping change. It's a slow, stubborn crawl. But it's happening. The ember catches, the flame grows, and bit by bit, the darkness begins to retreat. You glance up at the sky, and you can almost feel the tension building, the storm waiting. Zeus is out there, watching, biding his time. You get the sense he's not going to let this slide. But for now, in this quiet, flickering moment, Prometheus has done it. He's given humans a piece of the divine, even if they don't know quite what to do with it yet. The wind shifts, carrying the faint smell of smoke mixed with damp earth, and you close your eyes for a moment, letting it settle into your skin. The flame dances, the mortals murmur, and the world holds its breath. You watch as the mortals shuffle around the small fire, poking at it like a group of first-timers trying to figure out how to start a campfire from a YouTube tutorial. Except, they don't have YouTube, or even the concept of a tutorial, yet. The air smells faintly of burning wood and damp earth, a strange mix that tickles your nose. You can almost see the confusion flickering in their eyes, a kind of, "What now?" expression that seems universal across time. Prometheus stands a little apart, arms folded, watching with an expression that could be mild satisfaction or maybe just exhaustion. He looks like someone who's hosted a dinner party and now has to watch his guests try to figure out how to use chopsticks. The mortals, bless them, are trying. They gather sticks, they blow on the ember like it's a stubborn candle, and one bold soul, let's call her Myrina, tentatively holds a strip of meat over the flame, only to drop it in surprise when it hisses and smokes. There's a collective flinch, followed by nervous laughter, like a group of kids realizing they might have just started a forest fire. And here's the thing. Cooking wasn't an overnight success. It was messy. It took time. The first roasted meat probably tasted a bit crunchy in a bad way. Some things caught fire. Other things didn't cook through. Historians still argue whether early humans figured out the best way to roast tubers before they managed to not burn their fingers. Some say they figured out spit roasting before pots. Others think boiling in bark-lined pits came first. Either way, it wasn't glamorous. Prometheus shifts his weight, watching as someone, maybe a lanky teenager named Dion, tries to hold a hunk of something over the fire. The smoke stings his eyes, and he flails back, dropping the food into the yeti, ashes. You can almost hear Prometheus sigh, maybe muttering, "This is why I can't have nice things." The mortals learn, though, slowly. They figure out you can heat up water. That cooked meat is easier on the teeth. That fire can scare off wolves if you keep it going through the night. You picture them huddled around the flames, telling stories, watching the sparks drift up into the dark. Maybe they start to dream bigger. Tools, pottery, maybe even the first hesitant attempts at baking. You wonder if someone will accidentally invent toast by burning their bread and decide, hey, not bad. The ember becomes a flame. The flame becomes a hearth, and the hearth becomes the heart of the village. You can almost see the first family, huddling close, the warmth sinking into their bones, the darkness pushed back just a little bit further. Prometheus watches all of this with a kind of tired satisfaction, like a parent watching their kid tie their shoes for the first time, even if it takes 3 tries and a few stubbed toes. And yet, there's a shadow hanging over all of this, isn't there? Because and Prometheus knows that Zeus isn't going to let this go. The gods don't like it when mortals get too clever. They don't like it when titans play favorites. There's a storm brewing, far off but inevitable. You can almost hear the faint roll of thunder, soft and distant, like the first grumble of an annoyed parent about to give a very long lecture. But for now, the mortals are focused on their fire, their small victories. They roast roots, they char meat, they learn to keep the flames alive with careful feeding. It's slow and clumsy, and more smoke than flame sometimes, but it's happening. The world is changing, one awkward, smoky meal at a time. You glance at Prometheus, and you see it in his eyes, that mix of hope and dread, the knowledge that this moment, quiet and small as it is, will ripple outward in ways no one can predict. He stands still, the wind tugging at the edges of his robe, and you feel the weight of the story pressing down like the clouds overhead. For now, the flames crackle, the mortals laugh and cough and wave the smoke away, and the night feels just a little less dark. You breathe in the scent of fire and earth, and for a heartbeat everything holds still. You stand there in the flickering light, feeling the warmth of the fire brush against your skin, and you can't help but think how oddly cozy it is. A stolen ember, a group of mortals clustered around it, and a titan standing off to the side, trying very hard not to look too proud of himself. The wind tugs at Prometheus's robe and he shifts his weight, almost like he's debating whether to say something. Maybe a helpful, "Don't burn yourselves," or maybe just an awkward, "Good luck." But in the end, he stays silent. The air hums with a strange mix of smoke, curiosity, and the faint crackle of change. The mortals are figuring it out, bit by bit. You watch as a woman, let's call her Thaleia, tentatively pokes the embers with a stick, her eyes wide, her breath catching when a tiny flame dances up, only to flicker out again. There's a kind of wonder in her face, the same look you'd get if someone handed you a magic box that made light with the flick of a finger. You can almost hear the quiet murmur of discovery, the soft gasp when the fire flares, the shared laughter when someone's hair gets a little too close and they have to frantically pat it out. It's messy, it's slow, but it's happening. The fire is spreading, not in a roaring, world-changing blaze, but in cautious sparks. One hearth, then another, then a handful of flickering flames across the darkened land. The warmth seeps into the ground, into their bones, into the fabric of their lives. It's a small thing, this fire, but you can already see how it will ripple outward. Cooking, heating, metalwork, stories told in the dark. The world is changing. And it's all because one nervous titan couldn't leave well enough alone. Prometheus watches them, his face carved with something between hope and worry. And you get the sense that even he doesn't quite know what he started. He looks at the fire like it might grow too big, too fast, like it might slip out of mortal hands and spark something no one can control. And maybe that's the point. Fire is unpredictable. It burns, it feeds, it destroys, it warms. It's a gift, but it's also a warning. And here's the thing. No one really tells you. Prometheus didn't have to do this. He could have left the mortals in the dark, let them fumble along in the cold, safe from Zeus's wrath, safe from punishment. But he didn't. Whether it was pity, stubbornness, or just sheer defiance, he chose to give them fire, knowing full well the consequences might be, well, let's just say unpleasant. Historians still argue whether Prometheus was a hero or a fool, a visionary or a troublemaker. Some think he did it out of love for humanity. Others think it was a calculated jab at Zeus, a long, slow revenge for the old grudges between Titans and Olympians. There are even a few fringe theories that Prometheus was just bored. But whatever the reason, he's here, standing on the edge of a world that's about to shift, watching the flicker of a flame that might be the start of something big, or the end of everything. The wind howls, a low, distant moan, and you shiver. The air feels electric now, heavy with the promise of storms. You can almost hear the faint, slow crackle of thunder building far off, like a drumbeat in the distance. Zeus is watching. Maybe not now, maybe not this second, but soon. You can feel it in the bones of the mountain, in the way the clouds seem to press lower, in the taste of ozone on your tongue. Prometheus doesn't flinch. He stands there, shoulders set, the ember still burning faintly in the fennel stalk, and you get the sense that he's ready, or at least as ready as anyone can be when they've just poked the king of the gods in the eye with a smoldering stick. The mortals, meanwhile, keep fussing with the fire, oblivious to the cosmic drama unfolding around them. They're too busy learning how to roast roots without setting themselves on fire to notice the sky darkening, and you, standing there, feel it, the tension building, the story winding tighter, the sense that this quiet, awkward moment is just the calm before something big. The fire crackles, the wind shifts, the gods stir. You take a breath, and the world holds still. The sky above you grows heavier, the clouds thickening like a woolen blanket pulled tight over the earth. The fire crackles faintly, and Prometheus stands still, his face turned upward as if he's listening for something. Perhaps the distant rumble of Zeus's displeasure, or maybe just the hiss of the wind threading through the stones. His fingers tighten around the fennel stalk as if gripping it could somehow hold back the tide of what's coming. The mortals, though, they have no idea. They're too busy rediscovering what it means to be warm. You watch as a small group, 4 or 5 figures in worn tunics, their faces lined with years of cold nights, huddle close to the flame. One of them, an older man with a beard that could double as a bird's nest, holds his hands out, turning them slowly in the heat like he's trying to memorize the feeling. The woman next to him, perhaps his daughter, tears a piece of bark in half, adding it carefully to the fire, her face a mixture of fear and hope. There's a kind of quiet joy in the air, the kind that comes from having something you didn't even realize you were missing. The fire spits and pops, and a small child squeals with delight when a spark jumps up and vanishes into the night. They're learning, slowly, messily, but they're learning. One man blows too hard on the embers and gets a face full of ash. Another tries to cook a scrap of meat and ends up with a blackened lump that he gamely eats anyway, making a face as the others laugh. It's not a golden age yet, not by a long shot. The food is still sparse, the night's still long, and the fire still unpredictable, but it's a start, and Prometheus watches it all unfold with a kind of tired patience, as if he's both proud and resigned, like a teacher watching their students stumble through the basics. And then the wind shifts. It's subtle at first, a faint, sharp scent in the air, like the whisper of ozone before a storm. You glance up and the clouds are darker now, layered like bruises across the sky. There's a low, almost imperceptible rumble, and you swear you feel the ground vibrate beneath your feet, a soft, thrumming warning. Prometheus doesn't flinch, but you can see the tension in his jaw, the way his eyes narrow slightly as if bracing for the inevitable. Because here's the thing. You don't steal from Zeus without consequences. It's like poking a bear while it's napping. You might get a head start, but eventually the bear's going to wake up. Historians still argue whether Zeus's rage was immediate or slow to build, but the end result? Oh, it's coming. You can feel it. The sky feels too heavy, the air too still, like the world is holding its breath. And the mortals? They don't see it yet. They're too busy feeding twigs into the fire, watching the flames dance, sharing quiet smiles like children who've stumbled upon a secret. It's a fragile, beautiful thing, this moment. A small flicker of humanity clinging to a gift they didn't ask for, but now can't imagine losing. You glance at Prometheus, standing there like a statue carved from the mountain itself. His shoulders are square, his gaze steady, but there's something in the set of his mouth that tells you he knows. He knows the storm is coming. Maybe not tonight, maybe not tomorrow, but soon. The gods don't forget, and they certainly don't forgive. The air crackles faintly, and you swear the flame in the fennel stalk burns a little brighter, like it knows it's being watched. Prometheus glances at it, and for a moment, there's a flicker of something like sadness in his eyes. You wonder if he's thinking of what he's given, or what he's about to lose. A child claps their hands near the fire, a bright, unguarded sound that echoes against the stones, and you feel it, the contrast. The innocence of the mortals, the weight of the gods above, the quiet tension threaded through it all like a cord pulled tight. And you realize, this isn't just a story about fire. It's about defiance, and risk, and the stubborn hope that maybe, just maybe, a single spark can change everything. The wind picks up, sharp and cold, and you wrap your arms around yourself as the first drop of rain hits your skin, heavy and deliberate. Prometheus tilts his head back, eyes half closed, and you can almost hear him think, "Let it come." The first raindrop splashes onto the back of your hand, cold and heavy, followed by another and another, until the world around you seems to pulse with the steady rhythm of falling water. The fire sputters in protest, smoke curling up into the gray sky, but the mortals crowd in tighter, shielding the flame with their bodies, their hands, their ragged tunics. There's a shared determination in their faces now, a silent agreement that this fire, small, flickering, fragile as it is, has to stay alive. They might not understand where it came from or why they suddenly have it, but they know it matters. Prometheus doesn't move. The rain beads on his skin, dripping from the edge of his nose, tracing paths down the lines of his face. His robes cling to him, darkened by the wet, but he holds the fennel stalk high, the ember still glowing faintly despite the damp, and you get the sense that this, right here, is the quiet middle of the story, the part where everyone holds their breath, waiting for the gods to notice, for the sky to crack open and the real storm to begin. You can almost feel the weight of Zeus's gaze now, like a pressure on your chest, a low, building hum that makes the hairs on your arms stand up. Historians still argue whether Zeus truly cared about the mortals at all, or whether his rage was more about the insult, a titan defying his will, a reminder that even the king of the gods wasn't untouchable. Either way, the punishment, when it came, would be brutal. You know it. Prometheus knows it. And maybe, deep down, the mortals are starting to feel it too. One of the women, maybe Marina again, huddles closer to the fire, cupping her hands around it, as if she could will it to grow stronger. Her eyes shine in the dim light, wide and a little wild, like she's seeing the future in the flickering flames. Warm meals, safety, stories told late into the night, and for a brief moment, you feel it too. A kind of spark, not just in the fire, but in them. This is the beginning of something, messy and uncertain as it may be. The rain soaks into the earth, darkening the stones, trickling into cracks. The fire hisses and spits, struggling but not dying. And you can't help but think of how much history is shaped by the quiet, stubborn refusal to let the flame go out. It's not always the big, flashy moments that change the world. Sometimes, it's just a group of cold, hungry people, huddled together, refusing to let go of a tiny spark. Prometheus lowers the fennel stalk slightly, his gaze steady but heavy-lidded, like he's already imagining the chains that will soon bind him. And yet he doesn't look regretful. Not exactly. There's a hint of defiance in the set of his mouth, a stubborn tilt to his chin, as if to say, yes, I did this. Yes, I would do it again. And maybe that's the part that matters most. Not the fire itself, or even the punishment that's coming, but the choice to give it away. The act of defiance, small and quiet as it was, is the seed from which everything else will grow. You glance at the mortals, still fussing with the fire, trying to figure out how close they can get without burning themselves, how to keep it alive. Through the rain. They're clumsy, sure, they'll make mistakes, but they'll learn. And as the sky rumbles softly above, you realize this is how it starts, not with a roar, but with a flicker. Not with a hero in shining armor, but with a titan, wet and shivering, holding a burning stick and daring the world to change. The rain falls harder now, drumming against the stones, and you feel it in your bones. The story shifting, the threads tightening, the weight of what's to come pressing down like the heavy clouds above. You take a breath, tasting the sharp tang of ozone on your tongue, and the world feels like it's holding itself very, very still. For now, the flame flickers. The mortals watch. And Prometheus waits, a quiet figure standing tall against the storm, the ember burning low but stubborn in his hand. The storm doesn't crash down all at once. It creeps in slowly, like a cat stalking its prey, low and patient and certain. The sky darkens shade by shade, the clouds swirling thicker, and you can feel it in the pit of your stomach. A low, buzzing tension, like the whole world is waiting for the first crack of lightning. The mortals don't see it yet. They're still gathered around the fire, talking softly, their voices a low hum against the rising wind. One of them, maybe that same bearded man from earlier, holds his hands close to the flames, the light flickering across his weathered face, and you wonder if he's thinking about the stories they'll tell about this moment, long after Prometheus is a name carved into the stones. Prometheus stands apart, soaked and silent, the fennel stalk still, smoldering in his grasp. His expression is distant now, like he's already seeing the next part of the story play out. The chains, the eagle, the endless grinding cycle of punishment. There's a tightness in his jaw, but he doesn't move. The ember glows stubbornly. In the dark, a tiny rebellious point of light against the coming storm. The wind picks up, tugging at your clothes, and you feel the first heavy drops of rain splatter on your skin, cold and insistent. The mortals huddle closer, their laughter fading as they sense the change. They glance at the sky, then at each other, an unspoken question hanging between them. Did we do something wrong? Historians still argue whether Zeus's wrath was about justice or just ego. Some say he saw the fire as a sacred boundary, a line mortals were never meant to cross. Others think it was less about mortals and more about Prometheus himself, an old grudge, a cosmic power struggle between the generations of gods. Maybe it was both. Maybe Zeus just didn't like being upstaged by a titan with a soft spot for humans. The first crack of thunder rolls across the sky, deep and low, rattling your bones. It's not the bright, flashy crack you were expecting, but a slow, grinding growl like the earth itself is waking up and stretching before it gets serious. The mortals flinch, some ducking instinctively, others glancing nervously at the fire, as if it might betray them. The flame sputters, but it holds, stubborn and small, like a promise that's already too far gone to take back. Prometheus lifts his chin slightly, rain dripping from his beard, his eyes half-lidded but sharp. There's a flicker in his gaze. Call it defiance, call it resignation, call it what you will, but it's there. A quiet, steady spark that mirrors the ember he holds. You get the sense he's not afraid, not really, maybe tired, maybe bracing for impact, but not afraid. And you wonder, what was the moment when he knew? When did Prometheus realize this wasn't just a gift, but a sentence? Was it when he first plucked the ember, or when he saw the mortals gather around it, eyes wide with wonder? Or is it only now, standing in the rain, hearing the distant crackle of thunder, that he feels the weight of what's about to come crashing down? The air thickens, heavy with the smell of ozone and wet stone, and you can almost taste the storm on your tongue. The mortals glance at Prometheus now, their eyes darting between the titan and the sky, like they're sensing that the story isn't over, not by a long shot. A child clutches their mother's sleeve, a nervous shiver running down their small spine. The woman wraps her arm around the child, her other hand hovering protectively near the fire, as if shielding it from the gods themselves. The thunder rolls again, louder this time, and a single bolt of lightning snakes across the clouds, illuminating Prometheus in a brief electric flash. His silhouette is stark against the dark, the ember a tiny point of stubborn light in his hand. And you think, this is it. The moment before the storm truly breaks. The breath before the shout. The pause before the punishment. Prometheus shifts, his weight steady and unflinching, and the ember glows faintly in the rain, refusing to die. You take a slow breath, the air sharp and electric in your lungs, and the world holds still, waiting. The storm breaks not with a single crack but with a slow, deliberate shudder, like the sky itself is peeling open inch by inch. A low, rolling thunder rumbles across the land, deep enough that you feel it in your chest, a hollow vibration that makes the flame in the fennel stalk tremble. Prometheus doesn't flinch. He stands, tall and soaked, his eyes steady on the mortals as they scramble to keep the fire alive. Rain pours down in sheets now, fat droplets splashing into the dirt, making the smoke hiss and curl, but the ember clings to life, stubborn and small. The mortals don't know what's coming. Not really. They crouch around the fire, shielding it with their hands, their bodies, whatever scraps they have. One man, maybe it's Dion again, shouts something over the wind, and another, a woman with tangled hair and a crooked grin, laughs in response, her voice thin but defiant. You can almost hear it. We'll keep it burning. Just watch us. But the sky has other ideas. A jagged fork of lightning tears across the horizon, white-hot and brilliant, slicing the darkness with a crack so sharp it seems to split your eardrums in half. The mortals shriek, ducking low, and the fire sputters wildly, shrinking for a breath, then flaring up again, as if it, too, refuses to give in. Prometheus closes his eyes for a moment, just a flicker, just long enough for you to see the lines in his face deepen. Worry, maybe, or weariness, or the grim acceptance of someone who knows the price is coming due. Historians still argue whether Zeus's punishment was instant retribution or something that brewed over days, letting Prometheus think he'd gotten away with it before the hammer came down. Either way, it's coming. You can feel it in the charged air, the way the ground seems to hum beneath your feet. The gods are stirring. The storm is watching. The mortals don't see Prometheus as a criminal. Not yet. To them, he's the tall, strange figure who brought fire when they didn't know they needed it. They don't know the backstory, the grudges, the tangled family trees, the ancient grudges between Titans and Olympians. They just know that they're warm, and for the first time, they can cook a meal without chewing on half-raw roots and shivering through the night. You picture them Few hours from now, once the storm eases, huddled around the glowing coals telling stories they've barely begun to understand. Maybe they'll invent myths of their own, about a man with fire in his hands and the gods who tried to stop him. Maybe they'll get some of the details wrong, like all good stories. Maybe they'll make Prometheus a hero or a trickster or a fool. Maybe they'll call him a savior. Maybe they won't name him at all. The truth will blur, like it always does, in the retelling. Prometheus opens his eyes, tilts his head back, and stares into the sky. You can almost hear the unspoken words. Come on, then. There's no fear in his gaze, just a resigned kind of defiance, like someone who knows the bill is about to be paid and has already counted the cost. The mortals laugh nervously. Someone, tossing a stick onto the fire, the sparks leaping up defiant against the downpour. It's a fragile, flickering light, but it's there, and it's enough for now. Prometheus stands as still as a statue, rain streaming down his face, his shoulders squared like a man bracing against the wind. And you, standing there, feel it too. The weight of the story pressing down. The way the threads of myth and memory tangle together. The quiet, stubborn glow of a flame that refuses to go out. The storm might rage, the gods might roar, but for this one moment, the fire holds. The world hums with tension. The scent of ozone sharp in your nose, and the air crackles like a live wire, waiting for the moment when it all breaks loose. You glance at Prometheus, the faint glow of the ember reflected in his eyes, and you wonder, does he regret it? Or does he think even now that it was worth it? The answer, like so much else, is probably both. The storm lets loose all at once. Thunder slams down like the fist of an angry god, shaking the ground beneath your feet. Lightning splinters across the sky, so close it feels like it could split the mountain in half. The wind howls through the rocks, tearing at the mortal's hair and clothes, and the fire, fragile and flickering, dances wildly in the chaos. It should go out. Every law of nature says it should, but it doesn't. The flame clings stubbornly to life, shivering in the rain, defying the storm just like the Titan who brought it down from the heavens. Prometheus stands still, water streaming. Down his face, the fennel stalk clutched tight in his hand. His gaze is steady, locked on the distant horizon, where the clouds churn and boil like a pot left too long over a fire. You swear you see something move in the clouds, a shape, a face, an eye narrowing with cold fury, but it's gone in an instant, swallowed by the storm. Prometheus doesn't flinch. Not when the thunder cracks, not when the sky screams, not even when a bolt of lightning strikes a nearby tree, splintering it into a shower of sparks. He just stands there, the ember glowing faintly in his grasp, a tiny defiance against the will of the gods. And the mortals? They're terrified. They crouch low, shielding the fire with their hands and bodies, their faces pale and wide-eyed. One woman sobs softly, clutching a child to her chest. Another man prays under his breath, whispering words he's only half sure are right. The child reaches out toward the flame, transfixed by its dance, and you can see it in their eyes. They don't know what they've been given. Not yet, but they will. Historians still argue whether the first fires were kept alive through sheer stubbornness or by accident, whether it was luck, skill, or a mix of both that allowed early humans to nurture flame long enough to make it part of their world. Some say the first real leap came when someone, maybe just like this group here, figured out how to make fire on purpose, striking stones, rubbing sticks, coaxing sparks from the earth itself. But that's still to come. For now, it's just a small, fragile ember and the rain that wants to drown it. Prometheus shifts, the faintest tilt of his head, like he's listening for something. The storm crashes around him, but his focus is unshaken. Maybe he's waiting for the punishment. Maybe he's bracing for the moment when Zeus's fury descends. Or maybe he's just tired. You get the sense that he's been tired for a very long time. And then, the wind eases. Just a breath. Just enough for the mortals to breathe, to glance at each other, to realize the flame is still alive. Someone lets out a shaky laugh, half relief, half disbelief, and the others echo it. The sound small and strange against the fading storm, They gather closer, adding twigs, blowing gently, coaxing the fire back into life, and you feel it. The shift. The change. The moment when fire stops being a gift and starts being a tool, a power they'll learn to wield, however clumsily at first. Prometheus watches, his eyes narrowing slightly, as if memorizing this moment. The mortals crouched low, the flame between them, the storm grumbling overhead like a sulking god. He knows what's coming. The eagle, the chains, the endless punishment. But for now, he lets the rain wash over him, lets the thunder fade into the distance, lets the mortals tend their fragile flame. And you, standing there, feel the story settle. The storm will pass, the fire will grow, and the mortals will stumble, and burn and rebuild, just as they always do. Prometheus will pay the price, but the spark is lit. The world is changed. And maybe, just maybe, that was worth it. The wind sighs, a long, slow breath across the stones, and the fire crackles softly, stubborn and alive. You let your breath slow, sinking into the quiet now that the storm has passed. The fire glows gently, a warm, steady heartbeat in the dark, and you feel the tension in your shoulders ease, just a little. The mortals settle in, huddled close, their faces soft in the flickering light. You picture the long nights ahead, the quiet conversations, the slow, careful experiments as they learn to tame the flame, to cook, to warm themselves, to create. It's not a revolution all at once. It's a slow, steady unfolding, a quiet weaving of flame into the fabric of their lives. The rain has eased into a soft drizzle, a hush over the earth, and the clouds drift apart, letting a few stars peek through, distant and cold. Prometheus stands tall, still watching, still waiting, the faintest smile playing at the corner of his mouth. Tired, yes, but also content. Maybe. The mountain hums quietly beneath your feet, the storm's fury, spent, the world breathing a little easier. You close your eyes for a moment, letting the warmth of the fire settle into your bones. The stories are still waiting, of course. The eagle, the punishment, the endless cycle of gods and mortals. But for now, it's just the crackle of flame, the hush of rain, the steady rhythm of breath. You let your shoulders drop, your thoughts slow, your body sink into the quiet. The world is still turning and the fire is still burning. Sleep well, my friend. The story will still be here when you wake.